I've been meaning to do this, but it would be cool on the button, like strings, dramatic music today. Listen, on RMA.
If you could articulate this desire to me with an example of the music, then I could add it.
Okay, I know exactly
Just do that.
Okay, Richard Serrett's podcast. He does it. It's really cool.
Is this DRM free? Is it copyrighted?
I don't know.
See, because these are things one must consider.
I'm sure there's music. There's loops you can get from GarageBand that sound like it.
Oh yeah,
like no problem.
We don't want to get banned from Apple.
No, over it all.
Yeah.
So
snow.
I can't believe we made it. I mean, I can because
this is what we do.
This is what we do. We had a snowstorm-ish. Schools are canceled. My children are home. My wife is home.
That's why we're here,
and we are at the studio.
I couldn't believe. When I woke up this morning and I saw like 8 inches out the back window.
You're like, Jesus, that's gonna hurt.
I saw 8 inches out the back window. It was my reflection. No, I couldn't. I was like, oh shit, we're never going to be able to make it into the studio to record because it's going to take me hours to get out of the driveway. Mm-hmm. And then I went outside and I was like, oh, this is not much.
Not much at all. And I had a brilliant idea because I was like, oh, how am I going to dig out and get there, and then I'm talking to Mike, and I'm like, wait a second, can't you just pick me up?
There's your brilliant idea.
Brilliant.
4-wheel drive, Toyota 4Runner.
I love it.
Great car.
Very fancy. Very schmancy.
I remember the days before the not drinking part of my life where I would have to lay in an awful lot of wine the night before a predicted snowstorm.
I'm so glad you said that because I'm talking on the Inner Sanctum with some of the monksters. I think it came up about, we're talking about the snowstorm, and then it reminded me that snowstorms were like the time for me to get totally fucked up. And it was like I looked forward. Same thing with hurricanes. This is the time to like.
Right. Because everybody else is like also, hey, it's a natural disaster. Let's get drunk.
Let's join this natural disaster.
With our personal disaster. Let's put them all together.
Yeah. So,
are we starting?
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike R.
And boy, do we have a show for you today on RMA. As the snow begins to coat the north shore of Long Island, and all the little boys and girls staying home from school search the house feverishly for their mittens and knit cap, racing towards the nearest hill with sled in hand and dreaming the snow days would never end. But we don't take snow days here at RMA. Quite the contrary. We've got a big show planned for today. We're discussing the new documentary on HBO called Life of Crime. And we catch up on, how we did for New Year's Eve and all that kind of stuff. All this today and more on a very special snow day edition of RMA.
You wrote that last night as the snow was still falling. I can tell.
I did.
It took me about 25 minutes to get one child dressed this morning because speaking of finding mittens and hats and all that, no one's looked for them in a year. And the last I saw the gloves, the dogs were running around the house with them. So, finding them was always
Those dogs
was a challenge.
Listen, I love dogs and I would never insult a man's puppies. But
my dogs are assholes.
They're kind of dicks.
They really are.
Every time I go there, they act like I don't, they're screaming at me. They want to kill me.
They're undisciplined, little, ungrateful, small dogs. They're annoying, but I love them anyway.
Oh, wait, before you do this part, my wife says we got to cut this Patreon shit at the beginning. She's like, just get to the damn show.
Well, I've heard that too.
Okay. So maybe we don't do the entire thing that I wrote.
This episode is brought to you by Recovery in the Middle Ages Patreon. You guys know what Patreon is, right? It helps support artists with a small monthly stipend so we can keep the lights on. So if you go to our link in the show notes to the Patreon page, you can find out what's available there. We recorded an extra show this week.
We do extra video show. This is the reason I want to talk about it is I'm fucking so excited about this. And maybe that's on me a little bit. I'm very excited. All the stuff that's happening.
Yeah. So
and I want everybody on there.
So we put up an extra show. So if you're on the Patreon, you can check that out.
Yeah.
And we also have a Discord server, and that's fun. That's
what is Discord anyway?
I don't know. The kids use it for the video gaming. Yeah. But apparently it's also tied up with Patreon because you can go on there and it's like you can have private chats and all this kind of fun stuff.
It's totally secure, totally private, just for the patron monksters. We call it the Inner Sanctum. I've been chatting with the monksters on there all last night. I'm like constantly on there.
You are constantly on there.
Those guys are like helping me with the show, helping us with the show. And it's fun. It's fun. So join us.
Maybe we should be paying them.
Patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages.
Yeah. So welcome to all the new listeners.
Welcome to all the monksters listening stateside, around the world, down the street, across the table, and right next door. Welcome all. Settle in, buckle up, and get ready for excitement, comedy, tragedy, intrigue, mystery, and so much more.
Before we go on.
Yes.
I think we need to congratulate two very special monksters on their second sober anniversaries.
Yay.
Should I do that? You know, when Dave on Dopey does this, it sounds so canned to me because I know what it's all about. Anyway, so Cody Larson and TJ Vasquez. TJ is coming up on the 9th of January, followed by Cody on the 11th. These guys are pretty amazing. They participate a lot in our Facebook group, and they're also founders of the Sober Soldiers Recovery Community.
That word is inimitable.
I know, and I chose not to pronounce it.
I like that word.
Yeah, it's okay.
It means it's like so good it's imitatable or something. Inimitable, sorry.
So Soldiers is spelled SOLDIERZ. So if you're looking for these guys, you should check them out at sobersoldiers.com or search Facebook for their support community of about 3,000 plus members. It's a faith-based nonprofit recovery group based in Des Moines, Iowa, and I've relayed my story about Des Moines, Iowa, in the past. So they are and this is a quote from their materials. They are a full circle healing sober support system. It's a lot of alliteration.
I like it.
That works with mixed family dynamics who are seeking stronger relationship with God. They started it because they got sick of NA and AA during COVID and started their own thing.
Fucking A.
And that's what we're all about here, which is thriving online and in person. And it's amazing. And it's a podcast.
Yeah. I'm sorry I haven't gotten into it. I've been meaning to. I really want to hear this podcast. And I don't have no excuse for not listening to it. But they do amazing stuff. I mean, just the pictures TJ
Yeah, they had a big Thanksgiving dinner for everybody. I mean, it's awesome.
It's like a dream of mine to have something like that. So way to go. I mean, that's amazing.
And you know me, I'm not, I'm never like one to thump the Bible, but these guys, it's working for them. And if that's your flavor, you should definitely look them up.
They got a Facebook discussion group. Just look up Sober Soldiers, SOLDEIRZ, on Facebook, and it's sobersoldiers.com. So congratulations,
Cody and TJ. That's awesome. And thanks for participating in our community.
Yeah, so happy to have you.
Yeah.
But where should they find us, Mike?
They can find us at the newly redesigned middleagesrecovery.com website, where you can listen to episodes, buy merchandise, etc. You can also find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more. I think eventually, Nat, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be producing some videos to drop in the regular Facebook group,
YouTube,
too, right?
Yeah, now
on
that
YouTube.
Mike is getting into videos and stuff, and we're doing more of it, I'm getting more comfortable with myself on video. I don't know. If you guys have seen me on video, I'm just all over the place. I don't have a brain for the camera. I'm everywhere.
You're a man in constant motion.
I know. I hate watching myself.
Just sit on your hands.
Listen, I'm working on it, okay? Because I watch it, I'm like, Jesus, that guy won't stop moving, and it's me. So we're working on that.
Yeah.
And it'll be cool.
So while you're at our website, you could leave us a review. I'm sorry. While you're at our website, you can input your story into the newly redesigned Your Story section.
Yeah,
That's
it's
thing,
actually
right?
It's on the top menu.
It's on the top,
along with a link to soberliningsplaybook.com.
Oh yeah, Grant B's outfit where he aggregates all of the recovery news stories.
Yeah,
and you guys should check that.
So this is a partnership that's going to move forward, and we're very excited about it. So check it all out.
Yes. And of
please.
course, at the end of the day, if you want to grow the RMA movement, share the show with a friend, a confidant, someone in your recovery circles. If you get something out of it, help us help more people.
I love listening to you read my schlocky marketing copy. It's my favorite.
Well,
thing.
I try and arrange it a little bit in my brain because I feel funny, like sounding like,
I'm a game show host, right? I know. I my tongue is firmly planted in my cheek when I do the schlocky marketing copy. I hope you know that.
All right. So we got a review this. What else? What do we got here? We got a review this week, and we also got a Patreon email. Okay.
Do we have any voicemails?
No, not this week.
All right. Well, let's just say that call our hotline at 518-888-6297.
Or at 516.
Did I say 518?
Yes. You'll get somebody in Albany if you call 518.
516-888-6297 and leave us a cool message about who you are, what you do, what you feel about the show if you want. And maybe we'll play it. It'd be great to hear from you. We've got RMA recovery meetings through the private group.
Yes.
Check them out.
Join the Facebook group, guys. I mean, there's like 6,000 people on the Facebook page, but only a few hundred on the Facebook group. But growing.
570 or something.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of fun happens. Anyway, so can I read the review?
Yeah, let's get to the review.
All right, I want to read the review because I was going back and forth with this guy on the email a little bit.
Yeah.
This is another 5-star review from Apple Podcasts by EJJ76, who also has a name. Which I should have written down. Anyway, like many who started drinking in their early... Here it is. By the way.
Thank you.
Here it is. Like many who started drinking in their early teens, I've struggled with alcohol addiction all of my adult life. After a series of failed attempts at sobriety, the pandemic forced the issue. My career came to a screeching halt, and I found myself face to face with an unexpected retirement at 62. The prospect of having all the time in the world to drink was frightening, but I decided that this time was going to be my time. I vowed not to waste the rest of my life getting wasted. January 6, 2021... Yesterday would be a year for this fellow.
Wow.
Yes.
Congrats, guy.
Was my last drink, and thankfully I discovered recovery in the Middle Ages a month later. Thank God. Nat and Mike, first gift to me was to turn me on to Annie Grace's book, This Naked Mind, which redefined my relationship with ethanol and provided me a roadmap to living without it. I was never interested in AA, so RMA became the weekly leg up that I needed in those first difficult months. Just two suburban guys like me in recovery trying to keep all the balls in the air while keeping the demons at bay. I was drawn in by their charm, humor, and well-spoken intellect.
I love it.
That must be directed at me.
Yes, most likely.
And identified with their tales of excess. I survived the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the late 70s and early 80s and have stories of my own, after all. As RMA has matured and grown, so has my sobriety. The book reviews, interviews, and explorations of recovery topics have been invaluable to my own journey. Ending almost 50 years of addiction is a daunting task, and I need all the help I can get. As we enter 2022, I'm grateful for my life and my family and reflect on my many friends who tragically didn't make it this far. And you'll like this next part, Nat. Okay. To quote the movie Blade Runner, the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. Was that from the first Blade Runner?
I don't remember that, but my wife read this and she goes, "Bah, this is like your dream, friend right here." I'm like, yeah.
With grateful anticipation, I look forward to the continued support of RMA and its like-minded Facebook and Patreon family. That's Evan.
Evan, that is so great to hear. You don't know what this does.
And he's a Patreon.
For me, yeah. And he's a patriot.
He may be a patriot, but he's definitely a Patreon.
Thank you so much for supporting us. We're tickled that we can help you in your recovery. I don't know why I said
That's
that.
tickled.
I'm tickled, but thank you. Look forward to talking to you on Discord and getting to know you a bit.
By the way, I think Evan was having trouble getting on Discord, and I copied you on an email I sent back to him saying, I'm copying Nat on this because I'm going to put our best minds on it. So did you get the email?
I'm pretty sure I did.
Okay.
I think. And Evan, let me know if I didn't so I can help you.
Okay.
And we got a Patreon email. So, guys, when we can also get messages through Patreon, and those go straight to us a little quicker. So I'd like to read this one. And the person is Talawamama.
Awa Tagus I am.
Okay. They say, thanks, Nat. because I had said like welcome or something. He says, or she, I don't remember. Damn. Oh, Dre. This is Dre. Oh, it's a girl, a woman, because I mistakenly said him. In any case, so Dre. She says, thanks, Nat. I'm stoked to start interacting with the RMA community. I did figure out the Discord. Okay, fine. I asked my 13-year-old to help me. And I'm about to head over there and poke around in the channels. My username is Tala Wamama. A few bits about me to hopefully forge an initial connection. I live an hour northeast of the... Oh, she uses the word inimitable.
That's where you got it.
That is. Now I know why I use that. Thank you. I'm very impressionable. I live an hour northeast of the inimitable Grant Boykin in Grass Valley, California. However, I have family in Massapequa. So I love catching the Long Island inflections. I don't have an accent.
What Long Island inflections?
In the dialogue between yourself and Mike, I have 4 children, God bless you, ages 20, 17, twin 13-year-olds, my God, and a marriage of 22 years, which is braggable, and work more than a full-time job running school breakfast and lunch program at elementary school. The RMA podcast is perfect for my 5 a.m. prep in the kitchen. Each episode brings up some good nuggets for self-reflection or goals for growth, along with the reminder that I'm not actually alone. You guys totally get it.
Awesome.
My path has been super alt recovery, former garbage head, then overused cannabis and psychedelics, and finally committed to full recovery and stopped drinking alcohol and started really doing the work in November 2019. I still feel weird saying I'm sober, especially because I drink 2 cups of coffee every single day. And what is that if not a mind, mood altering substance?
Yeah, but coffee makes you human.
But
I couldn't stop.
But I can't. I can't function without coffee. So maybe I'll step aside from the caffeine next.
Right.
I feel
Vaya con Dios.
Really grateful to be here in the inner sanctum, and I'm looking forward to making some lasting connections. Thanks so much for making all the great content and working so hard to set up so many opportunities to build bridges for a recovery network for all of us in the RMA crew. Love, Dre.
What a lovely note.
Yeah, I love the Monksters. They're always smart and like, write well and use big words correctly, and they're nice, and I love it.
That's great.
I love you guys.
You know, before I forget, did you ever have any slogan when you had a hangover? I'm still thinking of the snow thing. Like my friends and I, if we would wake up after a particularly rough night, you'd be like, "Hey, how you doing? You know, Harry."
Wake and bake or something.
And Harry would be like, "My head hurts, my feet stink, and I don't love Jesus." You ever have anything like that?
No. I love it though.
Yeah, it was a code for like I'm suffering from a wretched, horrible hangover. I don't know why that just popped in my head.
I like that.
Yeah.
Next time I get a hangover, I'm going to use it.
Well, yeah, hopefully we have to use that.
Now it's time for. Did you come up with music for this segment yet?
Well, okay. I thought we were going to be videoing this, so I was going to drop it in. But I could still drop it in.
Okay.
If you hear music now, that means I dropped it in.
Okay. Now it's time for Monkster Speaks.
What kind of music?
I don't know. You're the producer of sound design.
Listen, when I picked that Christmas music, which I thought was a little funky and offbeat, you were like, "That's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life."
It was just so loud, maybe. I don't know. We'll think of something. Okay.
All right.
So I, once in a while, in the Facebook private group, I post like, I don't know, a thought experiment, something to think about, recovery related.
Yeah.
And this was kind of funny because I have this bag of recovery topic chips.
You do.
Right. And they're very
blazoned with the AA
yes.
fucking logo on
Look, it was the first one I found on Amazon search.
Yeah.
In any case, so they're kind of these antiquated AA sayings and things. So I wrote here, random recovery question, ship of the week. It was supposed to be chip.
What'd you write? Ship
of the week.
Well, because we're sailing into
the fellowship
horizon of new knowledge.
So I picked the chip says fellowship, and I write, how does fellowship figure into your recovery? I know I get a lot of fellowship out of you guys in our discussion groups and Zoom meetings. What about you? And for the record, the fellowship is not a nautically themed gay bar in Greenwich Village. Yeah. Thank you.
You didn't deserve that.
No, I'm sorry.
You asked me last night for a funny intersection of New York City streets that you could drop into that joke. And I sent you
I know.
the very real.
It was like Cumming and fucking. It was something
It was
weird.
the corner of Seaman and Cummings, which is a street that exists, an intersection that exists in Inwood. And Alan will attest to that since he lives up there.
So the reason I didn't, because I was writing that joke, and I don't know. It's just,
That was a joke?
yeah, well, mostly it's a half a joke.
Okay.
I wanted it. I don't know. The cadence of what you sent me didn't work with the timing.
Plus, it is a little more filthy, even though it's an actual street corner.
Yeah,
But it wouldn't be a place you'd put a gay
Greenwich
bar.
Village was on the beat that I was going with. It was in the rhythm.
But I mean, has Greenwich Village been like the center, the epicenter of gay culture, like forever? Like, is it still?
I don't know. I don't go to many gay bars there anymore.
Any gay monksters want to weigh in on that one? Just drop me a note.
So, Kelly C., and there's some controversy here, as they say, across the pond, with the chip that I use. Kelly C. writes, I'm new to the group, but I've been listening to the podcast for a while now, and the level of relatability recently gave me enough encouragement to take the step to tell a very close friend that I intended to quit drinking.
Accountability.
And coming out of the closet. Speaking of gay, I found it funny.
Okay.
Well, coming out of the closet is,
For drinking.
I think it's for drinking.
Okay.
I found it funny, not funny, that my proclamation that drinking was problematic for me and that I wanted to stop was met with responses like, quote, you don't need to do that, and just quit for 30 days again. That being said, fellowship to me at this very early stage means that there are other humans out there who understand, empathize, and won't discount how I feel about alcohol simply because the substance doesn't affect them in the same way it does me. I'm looking forward to participating in this group and learning some tools to navigate through what is somewhat uncharted territory for me. Thanks, Casey. Welcome to the group.
Yeah, that's interesting. So fellowship for her is other people who are non-judgmental and will, support her in her quest to remain alcohol free. I like that. That's a good definition of fellowship. So Allie D.P. D-P responded to Kelly C. by saying, Kelly C., welcome. Being honest about alcohol makes people uncomfortable. It does. It really does. Yeah. Maybe because it has the effect of people questioning their own intake. That's exactly it, I think. It's become so woven into our social fabric that many can't fathom giving it up. Thankfully, the numbers of sober curious and those abstaining are increasing, along with a lot of NA options, non-alcohol options. Right.
And then my inimitable partner, there's that word again.
Here it is.
Responded.
Oh, do you want me to read it? Okay. Fellowship is one of those words from the 1930s that AA likes to use to cement its place as the most anachronistic recovery modality in the modern era. That might be a little strong.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get people to talk about
But nobody was biting on your chip, so to speak.
It's true. You bet you bite a chip, and you didn't.
Fellowship reminds me of hobbits trudging to Mount Doom with the one true ring. It conjures up images of elk club socials and the Raccoon Lodge. Now, if there's a chip in that bag labeled companionship, camaraderie, or mutual support, that would remind me that the opposite of addiction is connection. And if I'm being honest with myself, I need the occasional company of other folks who have walked this path to make my life and my recovery complete and remind me that my struggles are not as unique as I think they are. What a smart guy.
What a smart... yes, very good. So I read that.
Thank you.
I'm like, what the fuck is Mike doing with my post that's just supposed to be, getting people saying nice things about being together. So,
I'm sorry.
You made a good point, though, and it got a discussion going, and I'm happy for it because it's important. Allie DP responds to you. She says, it's funny how language conjures up different pictures in our minds. When I hear fellowship, I think church. I don't think of sobriety groups because maybe I've never been to AA. I do know that groups like this one have meant everything to me on this journey. I don't know if I'd be alcohol-free without them. It's so comforting knowing none of us is unique in this struggle. I've hopefully made some lifelong friends and confidants. Aside from that, so much support from the thousands of people across the groups. There's no doubt connection is the key. Maybe addiction to alcohol was put on my path to teach me just that. Otherwise, I may have continued down the path of, quote, I should be strong enough to handle things on my own. Thank you very much. And let me just say a note about grammar. One of the things my father has always beat into my head is I used to say, none of us are. I would say, none of us are having a good time. And he always always stopped me and said, none of us is. And you did it in this. And it reminded me that because none of us is like saying not one of us. So none of us.
And you claim
is.
to have no childhood trauma?
Yeah.
Is that...
This is, like I said, most of the trauma I suffered as a child was grammatical and musical in nature. And then Melissa,
did I say that? Did I say is?
No, Allie did.
Oh, okay.
She's the one with
All
the proper
right.
grammar.
Good for her.
So my father would be proud. Melissa M. writes, when I hear fellowship, I get the same visceral introvert reaction that I do when I hear icebreaker activity, group project, and collaboration.
I love it.
Which is, oh boy, here we go again. Don't these people know I work better on my own? I'm with Mike. Mutual support or camaraderie feels much better. And then I wrote back, okay, so point taken. I will get some less antiquated recovery chips. And now let's all hold hands and say the Our Father.
Smiley, happy, laughy face,
Yeah.
right? Because that's... You don't actually mean that.
No.
Good point, though, because there are introverts for whom recovery meetings are excruciating.
Right, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't try and do. Like the whole point of
I don't
recovery
know.
is coming out of your shell and doing something you don't normally do.
If you were an extrovert and I told you have to shut up and not say anything for an hour and sit in a room, you would be like, F you, man. My nature is to be outgoing.
I think
so. Why are introverts always have to be pulled into like the world of the extrovert?
Well, here's what I think. I think in a room full of extroverts and introverts, the extroverts should come toward the middle, and so should the introverts. So the extroverts should calm down, shut up, and listen a little bit, and the introvert should speak up a little bit, but not either one being extreme.
I don't know. How about just do your own thing? It's hard enough to quit using a substance without also having to basically alter your personality at the same time. Yeah, changes obviously need to be made when you're quitting drinking or whatever, but a lot of people find it terrifying, the idea of speaking up in a group.
Well, I know that, and part of the reason why I think I'm pushing this our community so hard on Facebook and Discord is because it's a place to be comfortable doing this. It's like you can kind of participate as much or as little as you want and still get something out of it.
And if you want the face-to-face, the face-to-face on Zoom, we offer that on
every
Sunday mornings at 11:30 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, write us for details.
Yes, we'll send you the secret codes.
Absolutely. It's snowing. We've already said that. School is canceled.
Yes.
My kids are home. The wife is home from work, and your family, I presume, is also home.
My family is home. My son was up and out the door at 9 a.m. knocking on his little friend's door up the street to see if he wanted to go sledding or whatever.
Billy?
Not that friend. No, we've been trying to. Yeah. Another friend up the street whose parents moved here last year during the pandemic. They were one of the people that came out from the city, bought a house, and are kind of like,
we get a lot of those.
Yeah. But and then my other two kids are sleeping. My wife is up. Maybe she's getting caught up on the latest episodes of RMA, which apparently she was doing yesterday. She was sitting in her car at the supermarket listening to episodes of RMA.
I think our wives are talking about it because my wife is doing the same thing. She was behind, and now she's catching up and giving me show notes, which I appreciate. Thanks. She listens. But the big news in our life update is we had New Year's Eve.
That happened last week, didn't it?
It seems like 1,000 years ago,
right?
But New Year's Eve is a big deal for us Monksters because, it's for obvious reasons. Culturally, this is the drinking day. Historically, for most of us, this is the day we got the most blotto.
Right.
And so these days, now that we're sort of separated from that a little bit, there's still, you're dealing with the social pressures and, the thoughts and all of that. And so how is it for you? I know you haven't had a problem like this in a while, but it still comes up, right?
It comes up, but I mean, we're in the middle of this COVID thing. So even people that had plans, don't have plans. Nobody's ever really inviting us out for New Year's Eve. We're just not social like that. I don't know.
Well, if there was no COVID, we would do a thing. At 8 o'clock you do the ball or something.
Yeah, we totally could have done that, but it was weird this year. We had Christmas Eve, right? And everybody we was with. What's your father going to think about that? Everybody we were with on Christmas Eve and ended up getting COVID, except us.
Wow.
So my wife is like, we gave everyone COVID. And I'm like, no, I mean, they left the house. They went out and did things.
That was God that gave you COVID.
we got tested. Me, Ben, and Jack got tested 2 days before Christmas Eve, and we were fine. And Erin did a home test; she was fine. So I don't think it was us. But so New Year's Eve was not going to be like a go out and do stuff
Right.
night. So we were in bed by like 10 o'clock. I think Ben stayed up till midnight, the youngest child, but the rest of us were out. Although somebody was lighting off the most aggressive fireworks.
I know who it was. Probably Billy.
Really? Because they were like mortars. I mean,
yeah.
I thought it was an invasion. It was so loud. It was like right outside the window. But I have a guy who lives across the street who runs his own like landscaping business, and much to my irritation, in the summertime, he's got like 9 trucks and 100 guys.
Is that Antonio with the
Yes.
blue Jeep? I love that guy.
Yeah, he's all right. But
He used to work at the deli next door when I was a kid. When me and my father would go to the park to play tennis or something, on the way back, we'd stop at that deli, and he was working, and he was the nicest guy.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy, but he's also running a business out of his house across the street.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I remember.
So I think he was the one with the big booms, whatever. But we did nothing.
Well,
nor did I feel compelled to drink or anything.
No, not at all.
It was just like another night.
Yeah.
No FOMO. Sorry.
I love this kind of New Year's Eve. This was like a dream New Year's Eve for me because my youngest was old enough to stay up. He didn't pass out, and we were all together, and we just we did this thing where I think we got sushi, if I remember correctly.
Awesome.
My wife is like, okay, no phones or video game, or we played a video game, but together. But we're all going to spend time together. I made a fire. We got this, and we played this game called Jackbox on the PS5, which is like an interactive group game, sort of trivia.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like it's on the TV, and there's like trivia and stuff, and your phone interacts with it. So
really?
You make the answer. It's really fun. And we did that for like 3 hours.
Wow.
And we were just having such a great time. It was so nice. Everybody was getting along. There was no pressure, because my family doesn't pressure me to drink, thankfully.
One would hope.
I made this awesome mocktail because that's my new thing. I'm like trying to make good mocktails for myself. And I made a whole picture of it. And what
was it?
I don't remember. I think it's something with cranberry. I wish I wrote it down. It was like cranberry ginger ale and like lemonade or something. It was good.
Was it cranberry ginger ale?
Yeah.
Or cranberry and ginger ale?
Cranberry ginger ale.
I just found out that existed this year. I had never heard of that.
It goes
before.
awesome with like fruit juice, and then I put some maraschino cherry on top, and I was sharing it with my son, and just like we were really like getting into the, getting him into the headspace of we can have fun on New Year's Eve. We can even hold a drink and cheers it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need alcohol. Of course, my wife made a comment that, there's a bottle of champagne and she's the only one drinking it. And she was like, this doesn't feel so good, But, and then so she had the champagne, but I didn't feel a stitch of like jealousy. I didn't say, man, I can't celebrate without having champagne. It's New Year's Eve. It was just a fun time, and watch that the Dick Clark with Ryan Seacrest.
He's not still alive, is he?
Ryan Seacrest?
Ryan Seacrest has taken over for Dick Clark, who probably died 20 years ago, right?
It was a while ago,
maybe
10 or 15. So we watched New Year's Rockin' Eve, and it was great, man.
Did you stay up till midnight?
Yes, we all got up to midnight.
Great. Awesome.
I'm looking at the outline. It says you were in bed by 10. And then New Year's Day. Oh, this is the exciting part. We went to a New Year's Day to medieval times.
Wow.
In, where is it?
New Jersey.
In New Jersey, which I posted some pictures of on the Patreon group. And it was such a good time. And my youngest, who has been starting to watch professional wrestling, said, this is like WWE, but with knights and armor and stuff. And it was exactly like that.
Yeah, that's fun. Been there for that.
You went with my family, but I wasn't there. Is that true?
I didn't go. It was a scouting thing. And my wife, who was the den leader, took, I guess, your son and Ben and his little den people. And then they swung back on the way home and picked me up at work. And I drove home with them. But
I fucking loved it. I can't believe I've never been to this before. They just hand you food that you're not allowed to use utensils for some reason.
Right.
And they give you, so there's like 6 knights that are going to fight each other in this competition. And each section is supposed to cheer for their own knight, which is, I love this. I love it. and you get, cheering, and they put on this play basically where, it's just like wrestling. Like there's a stupid story.
It's a scripted story and
scripted fighting,
right.
But I went all in. And I've been doing this lately, like, I know even if something's cheesy or stupid, I don't care. I suspend disbelief and I just get into it. I get into the spirit, and I had the best time. I really loved it.
When she took the scouts there was one of the scouts' parents who went, a dad who ended up enjoying a significant number of middle-aged libations.
Oy.
And presumably driving home.
Yeah,
with his kid.
Well, there is a lot of booze there. When you first walk in and you've got an hour to kill or half an hour, there's a gigantic bar, But instead of me going to the bar, they have all this cool like swords and like this is the sword of
right.
King Arthur, and it's all this fun stuff. And didn't drink though.
No,
did not need to, but that was a great time. And what did you do?
It's interesting that there's this thing is literally in the swamps of the Meadowlands, like in the middle of nowhere. The only way to get there is by car, and then they push the booze on you. Like, what are they thinking? Like, it's all kids with their parents. Here, get loaded up on liquor, and then drive your kids home on the parkway.
They're expecting one of the parents to be the designated driver.
Is that what they expect?
I think that's what they tell themselves, so they sleep at night. But who knows? I don't know. What did you do?
When?
New Year's Day. Did you do anything? You didn't celebrate?
Well,
it is a holiday.
Ben and Erin got their COVID booster shots on New Year's Eve.
Ugh.
Happy New Year.
Yay.
So Erin had a fairly negative reaction, so she was in bed the whole day. What did I do on New Year's Day? I don't even remember. Just running around, keep making sure everything was chill at home. It was fine.
We have a tradition in our family where my mother-in-law always does a big meal on New Year's Day. Now, it didn't happen this New Year's Day. I forget why. We did it the following day. So it's a New Year's Day meal. She makes all these Polish delicacies. She is Polish.
She made guamkis?
She made pierogi.
Pierogies.
And from scratch, let me tell you.
Wow.
Holy mother of shit. It was so good. I love my mother-in-law. She could be a pain in the ass sometimes. But, her cooking is the best.
You gotta slip me some pierogies sometime. I gotta have the homemade pierogies.
Oh my God, it's so good. Yeah. It's so good. And so we went there, and then we exchanged gifts for Christmas because we didn't see each other on Christmas. We didn't see the family, so it was really like another Christmas. My sister-in-law showed up, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The kids had fun too.
So something that we talked about quite a bit on the Patreon episode is the fact that the store. Your store is closing?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that or no?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about that. So one of the big deals with this new year was, as many of you know, I've been talking about closing my store, which is a sports store in a small town, and it's been open 4 years. And it's just been pretty awful during COVID for obvious reasons. But I have put off wanting to close it because everybody in the town who does shop here, which isn't enough people, love it. And I have a great relationship with them. And I finally made the official announcement. I made it real. I finally told the biggest thing that was giving me anxiety, and I'm talking crazy anxiety, losing sleep, was telling the landlord. For some reason, this was the thing that gave me the most anxiety. And I was really in a bad way, like mentally. And I don't know. It was just the worst. And then I finally called him, and he didn't pick up. So I left a message, and I just said it on the message. But I thought that would relieve me. But because I didn't have his response, it gave me more anxiety.
Yeah.
And then I sent an email to follow up and say, unfortunately, we are going to, be ceasing operations as of January 31st, and I'm very sorry, and, see you later. And then, of course, to which he wrote back, what about the lease?
What about the lease?
Well, my attorney father said, treat that as a rhetorical question and just keep closing.
That's great.
But it seems to be okay. They've put a for rent sign on the front of my store, and I've got 50% off stuff all over the place. And it's out there. It's happening, and they're showing I said, you can show it to potential renters. It's fine with me. And so that is something that's kind of a big deal.
Well, hopefully they find somebody to take the space, and that alleviates your responsibility. Do you think that being someone in recovery, your stress level for something like talking to your landlord is higher than that of a normal person, or do you think that has nothing to do with anything?
I think it has nothing to do with it. I think what it is the type of person I am in general. I'm just like, I'm anxious, and I don't know, but I'm keeping a really good mood because it's like my customers they're like devastated, some of them. I'm going to need a grief counselor, and so I have to keep my demeanor up, and I have to keep being happy. And
well, that's a difficult thing.
It is, but
in the face of all that personal internal stuff that's going on with the closing, you feel like you have to be like up and happy and everything. That must be stressful, no?
It is, but the truth is I am happy. I am excited. I'm like, I've got so many possibilities of what I can do next. I have a job basically waiting for me February 1st. I have to hire a bunch of people for this company. I'm going to be in human resources, and I get to work with people. And at the same time, I'm going to get my master's.
Awesome.
And I also want to get a smart recovery facilitator certificate with you.
Yes, let's do that, because one thing that's really on message for us would be to offer an alternative to 12-step recovery in our town, in our general area, because there are none at the moment. Yeah. One of our listeners actually looked up whether there's any smart recovery meetings here, and there aren't. So it would be Liz, filling a need for people. Yeah,
Liz reached out to me today on Discord to tell us what her friend said about it. So thank you, Liz, for that.
Yeah,
and I'm excited. And I was thinking this. It was yesterday, and my store is closing. It's the end of the world, But I feel more excited. I feel more happy about my life, with more hope. This albatross around my neck, this store as it became in COVID, I'm losing it. It's gone, and
that's a weight off your shoulders.
It's the potential is unlimited. With RMA, I'm going to be able to do more for this show, hopefully, and take this into the next level. And I'm just excited. I'm like genuinely excited for my life right now.
I'm excited for your life, too.
Yeah.
I'm excited to find out what taking it to the next level means.
Yeah. We're doing it right now. Video shows, all
Video shows.
And so that was kind of what was going on with me. Now, you had some drunk lawyer shit.
Yeah. I had somebody reached out to me.
Did you read the headline?
Drunk ass lawyers get a talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the headline.
That's the headline. I had somebody reach out to me after my Annie Grace appearance. It was another attorney who said, hey, there's this conference on attorney wellness going on in January. Would you like to participate? And I said, sure, I'll participate. I've decided that when these opportunities come up, I'm just going to say yes to all of them.
That's an AA thing.
I've heard that's an AA thing.
They say, never turn down a speaker request.
Right.
Never say no.
So, sure. And then she's like, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. And I didn't hear anything back for a few months. And then a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago, she's like, listen, this conference is in 2 weeks. And would you like to, participate as like a facilitator? And because you have a podcast, you can, facilitate the conversation between these, a panel of attorneys.
I would just like to say one thing before you continue. When we started this podcast, were anonymous specifically so people in your industry and job wouldn't know that you were a recovering alcoholic. And now...
I don't use that term, by the way. So
you're just an expert who...
I am someone that's changed his relationship with alcohol.
Oh.
Okay? Because this panel is very much focused on Annie Grace style recovery. We're not even mentioning AA. It's all smart recovery, right. Annie Grace, any other alternatives to recovery, because it's a health conference and it's virtual, so people can drop in on our presentation
without saying I'm an alcoholic.
Right, they can watch it at their leisure. It's it's not even being broadcast at a certain time, but it's going to be up for a certain time. And I was thinking, well, we've had this discussion before, right? Lawyers drink a lot. Advertising executives drink a lot. Everybody drinks a lot, right? But then I started going, in preparation for this thing, I started actually looking at the numbers for lawyers. And when it comes to attorneys, there actually do seem to be more lawyers struggling with alcohol than in other professions.
And that's self-reporting? So it's probably more.
There was a survey that was done by Hazelton Betty Ford, along with the American Bar Association, that indicated that 36.4% of respondents had scores on the alcohol use disorder identification test that were consistent with problematic drinking. So that means 1 in 3 practicing attorneys are problem drinkers based on volume and frequency of alcohol consumed. Not only that, 28% suffer from depression and 19% show symptoms of anxiety. So they surveyed 12,825 licensed employed lawyers in 19 states all around the country. What percentage would you think of surgeons have problematic drinking patterns?
10%.
15%.
Ooh, I was
but
close.
It's half of that of attorneys.
Well, they're a different breed of cat.
But they're around all those drugs all the time.
Yeah, but to get to that point in your medical career where you are a surgeon, it is the top of the top of the top of med school. These are people who are the highest functioning human beings.
Right. Well, but you could say that about big firm lawyers and appellate lawyers and all that as well.
Well, maybe. Yeah, but lawyers are different. They don't have people's lives in their hands with millimeter incisions, you know what I mean? Like it's a different profession, so that's why I would think surgeons.
Something that came up is interesting is like surgeons, like airline pilots. If you're an airline pilot and they find that you have trouble with alcohol, there's a specific program that's set up just for airline pilots that you go through and you take this program, and then they gently ease you back into the profession. Because I guess the thinking is all this money's been spent on training, right? And you don't want just to wash this person out because they have a problem. There's nothing similar to that in the legal profession. Well, they also have it in the medical profession, which maybe that's why the incidence of alcohol use disorder is only 15% there as opposed to 35% for lawyers. But I don't know.
Interesting.
So anyway, that's coming up. I'm going to have to record the panel next week.
Oh, can you put it on the Patreon?
I don't know, because I think you have to pay to access this particular.
That would be interesting.
Conference, but if I can, I certainly will. Anyway, so that's kind of interesting thing that's going on for me right now.
Speaking of doctors, there's a really amazing documentary with a companion fictional series called Dr. Death. I think it's on Apple TV+.
I listened to the podcast. Yeah.
And there's, I guess, also a podcast that inspired it.
Yeah.
And it's about this surgeon, this back surgeon, who is just he's a compulsive liar, and he's a horrible addict. And he basically paralyzes and kills people.
30-something patients
doing surgery, and it's an amazing. The fictionalization is really good on Apple TV Plus. The story is extremely horrifying. And he must have also been a sociopath.
Yeah,
right. And so,
but it took so much to get his license pulled. That's the crazy thing.
We should do a show about that. Yeah, it's very interesting. Dr. Death. Okay, where are we? Oh, I wanted to just mention a couple of other things. Homelessness and poverty, even in our town, it's getting worse. It used to be that you'd see one walking around, and I've got a couple that come into my store, a couple of gentlemen who I've become friends with. Mm-hmm. One of them, as you know, is John the Can Man. I met him at the local outpatient rehab. So we were in rehab together. I've talked about him way back on the show.
Right.
Call him the Can Man because his job basically is, going around town and getting cans and cashing them. And everybody knows him because he walks everywhere.
He does. Everywhere. He's a man on a mission.
So once I got to know him, and I remember when I got into the outpatient rehab and I saw him sitting across the table, I'm like, finally, I get to find out this guy's story. Mm-hmm. And so I did. And after I graduated that program, he knew I had a store in town, and he started coming in. And, I'm always, just treating him with respect and love. And, I feel like people sometimes don't do that with someone who appears to be, on the outs.
Right.
And there was another person in a similar situation who's been coming in, and he always comes into my store and he just wants to look at the mitts, the baseball mitts, and he talks about, how he used to play, and boy, he would love this mitt or that mitt. And he came in yesterday just to say hello, and he's eyeballing. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry you're going out of business." I said, "Don't be sorry." And he picked up this $260 mitt that he really had his eye on. And the bottom line is, he's like, "I want to buy it." And I said, I'm like, "Yeah, you can if you want. I'll give you a great price." And then finally, I said, "Well, half price." I think it was $130. And I said, "Listen, you really, really want it?" And I would have given it to him, but I know he wouldn't have gone for that. He doesn't want charity,
right?
And so I said, "How about $100?" Right? And he thought about it, and he goes, "Yep." He pulls out a C note, as he called it, and then I know he's not living under a roof. I know he's in his car, because he told me last time when he came in drunk, and he told me all this stuff. So I know he's struggling, and I saw he didn't have a hat, he didn't have gloves, he didn't have a scarf, and so I said, and I've got that stuff. I said, the mitt comes with this winter hat. You need one? "Oh, really?" I'm like, yeah, it comes with this. And I said, "You know what else?" I said, "Well, how big are your hands?" And it's large. I said, "I got a pair of gloves. Comes with the mitt." And
oh, that's
like,
nice. That's nice.
Like, "Oh, that's so great. I can't believe how much I'm getting for a C note." And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, not only that, I'm trying to think, what else can I give this guy? I had this neck gaiter that keeps you warm at night. I said, "Oh, and one of these." And he was like, "Oh, man." And it was great because he didn't feel like he was getting charity.
Right.
And he's like, just getting a lot for his money.
Yeah.
And it just, that stuff makes me feel good.
Sure, man. That's awesome.
And I felt good about it. And, but I feel bad that he's in that predicament.
What's he going to do with a $100 baseball mitt? I
don't know, but I'm telling you, he's come in 10 times just drooling over it. Like, if there's something about
maybe
that
it represents something to
right. Yeah. And I wanted him to have it. And honestly, I would have just given it to him, but I could tell he wants to be, I don't know if that would, if he likes to accept charity.
Well, he might need another one if he wants to play catch with somebody.
Well, if he wants another one, it's full price.
Right.
So that was Dwight. And that's
cool.
What's going on.
So, before we move on to the main topic, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our friend Dave from the Dopey podcast was on Mark Maron's show.
Oh, that's right.
This week. And it was a good interview. You guys should check it out.
Mark Maron is pretty interesting. He's got a huge podcast, like
huge audience.
How many listeners would you say he has? Is he like Joe Rogan?
Hundreds of thousands, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big podcast. The guy interviews celebrities galore. He interviewed Barack Obama famously.
Yeah. And Dave.
Yeah.
Which was kind of crazy. And you kind of got a shout out at the end. Dave said, Mark asked him, how he puts the podcast together or something. And Dave was like, "Well, I got this guy that edits, and I have this other guy that helps me with marketing and stuff." And I was like, "That's Nat."
I'm the guy.
Yeah.
It was very cool. I'm very happy for Dave.
Yeah, it was great. I mean,
I love working on that show.
I like Maron. He's a grumpy cynic. Turns off a lot of people, including you.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like him, but I think Dave's a better interviewer, to be honest. I got more out of his interview of Maron than I got out of Maron's interview of him. But
Dave's natural. I mean, he's talented, and that was really cool for us as Team Dopey, just to see, because we're trying to push it. We want to get him to the next level along with us, but I'm laser focused on getting Dopey to where it needs to be. And it was just really cool. And I always love a little mention, even if it's anonymous.
Sure.
So check that out. WTF podcast. The latest episode has Dopey Dave.
So we're going to move on to our main topic. But before we do, a word from my bladder.
And we'll be right back after these words.
So your wife was asking you to bring her a fancy salami?
And we're back. Yes, indeed. I got a text from my wife on break, and she said, "Please call me before you get home." and I immediately get this pang of anxiety. It's like when your wife...
Are you afraid of getting yelled at?
I think. It's like I have PTSD, from years gone by. And so I'm like, I can't do the rest of the show until I hear what this is.
Right.
So what it is my 11-year-old finally woke up. And
demanded meat?
He was about to go downstairs to his computer palace. And he's got this homework to do, this project, which is just a huge pain in the ass. But he's got to do it. He's been putting it off. He promised he'd finish it today. And she said, no, you're not going downstairs. You're either going to play outside or you're doing your homework. And so he and his little brother went over to our neighbor's house down the street. And they're going to build igloos.
Yeah, that's better than doing your homework.
The mom is baking chocolate chip cookies and hot chocolate, and I'm just really glad that he's not being a computer boy today.
Yeah.
And I'm not in trouble. So
I'm still not sure where the salami comes in.
Salami, there's an Italian bakery and sort of a grocer across the street that's new. And my oldest son, who's got very fancy taste, wants an Italian sopressata.
Really?
Yes.
Your son has requested the Italian salami.
Yep.
Huh. Go figure.
There you go.
Now I have envy because I wish my son appreciated good salami as well.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is bothering me.
My older son likes the fancy food. He eats sushi, and he's got my palate, for cuisine. But my younger son only eats, like pizza, chicken nuggets,
right, macaroni and cheese,
and kale chips, incidentally.
Really?
It's the only vegetable.
That one outlier thing that they tend to fixate on. Anyway, moving from fancy salami to, I've got no segue. For
the life.
Yeah, this was a fucked up documentary, man. The Life of Crime.
Yeah, we're discussing today Life of Crime on HBO. It's the Emmy-winning veteran documentary filmmaker Jon Alpert directs and produces Life of Crime, 1984 to 2020 on HBO Max. And it's an unflinching look at the lives of three friends in the grip of crime, substance abuse, prison time, and the struggle to get sober and stay free.
Really interesting documentary. Probably one of the most tragic things that I've watched in a long time. I mean, it's just shocking. But in the beginning of the so it follows these three people from 1984 all the way till the 2000s. Right? It starts. Did you watch the original one that came out in 1989?
No, I watched whatever HBO put out where it's all three of them together.
Well, they cut a lot out and they rearranged stuff. Like I was on YouTube yesterday watching a little bit of the stuff from the 1989 version, and they went really deep into like some of the characters that ended up not being like much in this. Like there's that scene where that guy Mike in the beginning, he's beating up his girlfriend or whatever.
Yes.
Anyway, and then he goes to prison, and then he decides he's not going to participate in the documentary anymore.
Yeah. That was Mike?
That was Mike. Yeah. Right. He is still alive and around.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And I was going to say, I wrote this down. One of the first things you see is just a horrific domestic violence scene.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he killed, but to me, I had this visceral reaction. So much that I don't even want to repeat it. I was going to,
And he'd only been going out with her for 2 months.
Yeah. And they've got a baby, and he hits her while they're filming this documentary. And the guy goes, "Hey, you sure you should be doing that?" She's like, "Yeah."
She doesn't listen.
Yeah, she don't listen. It's the only way she learns, he says. And he's like, "Get back in your hole." And I was like, "Holy shit." I mean, wow. It just hurt my heart.
Just to sort of set the stage, I guess, a little more, Life of Crime begins in 1984. It takes place it follows these three folks around in Newark, New Jersey, which is not a nice place from, what I can tell. So it opens with they follow this guy, Rob Steffi, who's scratching out a living as like a shoplifter along with his buddy, Freddie Rodriguez. Yeah. And they're like suave, guys in the beginning. They're young. They have a car, they flashing their wads of cash around.
Yeah.
Basically, they go into all these stores and they're just shoplifting and then selling the stuff out on the street.
Yeah. They're living the life of crime, and like it's going well as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, life of petty crime.
They say things like, and so maybe I go to jail for a little bit, and then I'm out, I'm doing it again. And they're just like loving it.
Right. And they ask him, like, are you afraid of being caught? And he's like, I'm always afraid, but it beats minimum wage and I got to eat, and then Freddie's like, why make $150 a week when I can make $150 a day, and they're like, they're all like sort of riding high on this life of petty crime. And they just,
how old were they? When they
I would say 20? They were in their late teens, early 20s, young and full of like swagger and then like you could just see him start with the drugs, like with the sniffing cocaine, and drinking, they're drinking Budweisers and stuff. And
this guy captures everything on this documentary. It's amazing. He was just, and they did everything in front of, it was amazing.
They really opened up to him.
Yeah.
He's asking questions of them from behind the camera, and they gave him like unprecedented access because I think in the back of their heads, maybe they thought that they wanted, the people to see like what their lives were like or something, and how they weren't like just nothing people. Yeah,
and then there's the allure of I'm on camera.
Yeah,
and they thought they were stars to begin with.
But like then they start with the drugs, and they have to support their drug habits. In the early part of the documentary, it was Valium. There's that one scene of Freddie driving around in the car, and they're asking him how many pills he took today, and he's like he's counting it up. He's like I don't know, 17 Valiums, cocaine, and then they start getting into the heroin, right?
Right. Well, you watch their lives slowly deteriorate, and it's kind of like it's instructional almost. Like here's how this is going to go. Mm-hmm. You see. They get nabbed, one spends time in prison, and then you're watching this happen, and as it goes, the more drugs get involved.
Yeah, like that guy Mike we were talking about before, like he gets busted for something, and then his mother bails him out, like $750 gets him out. He absconds, he jumps bail, and they go and interview his mother, and she's like, I don't know, I'm going to lose the money. That's Mike, he's got to make his decisions, and I'm thinking, the parenting is not the best in this situation. Like they introduce Rob's father, and that guy can barely like.
That's the stepfather where he looks crazy.
Yeah. Well, Freddie's father's the one who was like so drunk on vodka that he was making that face like, like a troll and running around. Yeah. Rob's dad was like, he was just a quiet guy, just kind of standing in the kitchen, and I'm like, this guy is not mentally all there, and Rob grew up with that as a role model. I mean, that's
yeah.
And that's the thing that really hit me is like the
family system,
the generational, issues. Like all the parents were drunks or drug addicts also. Like Freddie's whole family was doing drugs constantly in the house, and very different from like a suburban drug user like you or I who came out of, a position of relative privilege.
Right. And some of that goes to, I think Maya Zalovitz is, was she the one with she was talking about the intergenerational, like your DNA has changed. Yeah. So like 2 generations back, there's an addict or an alcoholic and mental illness. And even without the environmental, influence, there's a genetic influence that is hard to shake.
It's epigenetics.
Yes, thank you.
So you have the genetic predisposition, and then along with that, you're in the environment,
right?
That gives you all these opportunities to fulfill the potential of the genes, the bad potential that you have based on the generational trauma. It's really crazy to see because, I kind of liked those guys. Like Mike, he was not the guy who was beating his girlfriend. No. He ended up going to jail. He got a long sentence. He got like 15 years for strong arm robbery or something. Yeah. And he decided, I'm not participating in the documentary anymore. And that's the last you saw him was like 1986 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But the other 2 guys I kind of liked them.
They're likable guys.
Yeah.
They try, and you watch, it's amazing. They follow them into prison too, the guys that let them. And so you not only get to see how they got into prison, but then you see like what happens when you go to prison and like what kind of treatment are you really capable of getting in a prison, if any. And, it's supposed to be rehabilitating. But you kind of watch. I think it was Freddie. I get the guys mixed up. He's the one with the big glasses.
Yeah.
And you watch, him talking to the other prisoners, and they're interviewing him, and they're like, "What are you going to do when you get out?" And it's just to hear what his plans are. You ain't never going to touch drugs again. He's like,
right.
"No, I don't need that." And then some of them do get recovery. But what was really interesting to me, and this came up in Joseph Naus's book, it's post jail where you're dealing with a parole officer,
right?
And so the life you get to see. Okay, now that these guys are out of jail and they have good intentions to stay sober and
yes.
like have a good life, they all say they want to have a normal life. And you watch how the world and the system pulls them back,
right,
and makes it difficult, and it makes it near impossible for them to conform to the terms of their parole, which sends them back.
There was, I like that they showed the parole officers over time and different ones, right, depending on what point in these guys' lives when they got out, they'd have a different parole officer.
Yeah.
Some of them were nice enough to the point where they felt like if they were going to relapse, they called their parole officer and said, "Can you help me out?" And they would help him out. But Freddie, that one time, he had that other parole officer who basically was just this young guy who was a real douchebag.
Yeah.
He just put on
that was the 90s. Right?
Yeah, he put on his Kevlar vest to go do a home visit, at Freddie's house, and he goes in there and he finds that other members of Freddie's family are doing drugs. He's like, "You can't stay here."
That's right.
But he doesn't give him an alternative. He brings him to this apartment for rent, and it's a real shithole. Like the guy shows him the rooms and the place is falling apart, and he's like, "I can't stay here." And they're like, "Well, okay." The parole officer says, "We're going to take you to a hotel, and you could stay at this hotel. But if you go back to your family home, I'm going to put you back in jail."
Yeah.
And this hotel is $120 a night. And
right. Back then,
and Freddie's got 2 days worth of, of money enough to cover it. And he's sitting on the bed in this hotel and he's like, "It's really nice in here, man, but I can't stay here." And then sure enough, within a couple of days, he's back on drugs and,
what the hell is he supposed to do?
Yeah.
He's put in a situation. I mean, how much of it is his fault? I mean, that's an even bigger question. You might say, well, look, he was life of crime. He did this to himself, but he also served his time. He's, stated that he wants to be better, but his situation, his living situation isn't better. Mm-hmm. And they even make it worse. Maybe he would have been fine in the family home. Who knows? But
probably not.
Yeah. But there's no really good alternative for him, and you can't find work, and you can't find a place to live, and you don't have tools to correct that. What the hell is he supposed to do?
You go back to doing what you were doing before. That's why the recidivism rate is 70% for convicted felons.
You think back on when times were good and you were having fun, you had wads of cash, and you associate, well, what was I doing?
Right.
I was robbing, stealing, drugging, and I was great.
Yeah.
You failing to, make the next logical leap, which is, and then I was in prison. And then
right. But I mean, an environment like inner city Newark where these guys were living, there was no avenue to doing anything. I mean,
all my friends are street friends. You know that.
Right.
Remember?
Exactly. Because that's right. That Jon asked Freddie, I think at one point, "Do you have any friends who are not criminals?"
Right.
And he's like, "Well, no."
You know that. He's like, "You know that."
Right.
They're all street friends.
Right. And it didn't seem to matter how hard you tried because,
they tried.
These guys did stretches and they'd get out for a little while and then they'd go back in. But the one that really got to me was Rob. He got out and he strung together 2 years of sober time, and he got a job working at an Eckert's drugstore. And he
was doing great.
And he was going around 12-stepping, I guess they call it, going out and trying to find people to get sober. He was really doing the work.
Yeah. And Del Iris did that too. Del Iris.
We didn't mention her yet, but she was
a huge part of this.
Yeah. Delirious, I think her name is.
It's either Delirious or Deliris.
Deliris. She was, I guess she was Rob's girlfriend first.
Right.
And then Freddie had a thing with her also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was getting confused as to who's who watching that, but.
Well, she had it pretty rough too. I mean, she had a couple of kids and she was addicted to heroin.
And prostituting.
She was prostituting. She was kind of in and out of prison too, but maybe a little less time in than the other guys. But she couldn't seem to get clean at all. I mean, she did
until she did.
She did, and then she had a couple of years, and she
was doing great.
She looks great. She was healthy.
She returned to the drug area. If you guys have ever watched shows like The Wire, and they show the projects in the city where the drug dealers are all just hanging out, and everybody. So you walk in, and then a million guys come up to you. Oh, you need this, you need that. Where she used to go. After she was clean and trying to help people, she would go back to those situations, probably not ready for it, but to help.
Right.
And, and it was interesting to watch her interact with her former, friends who she would buy or sell drugs to.
Right.
And she'd be like, no, I don't do that. I'm here to save people and this and that. Ultimately, she goes back, I think being around all of that.
She had a long period of sobriety, and then
she did so much to help people.
And then within 6 months, she had lost 80 pounds and was living in a hotel with some weird dude.
Yeah.
And she had her high school graduation picture up on the wall of the room she was living in. And she looked like she weighed 60 pounds or something. It was really, really messed up. And nobody thought that, the filmmaker was like, I don't know. I'm torn between giving away, and not giving away. But I don't think that the ending is really the important thing about this.
No.
So I'm gonna throw some spoilers out. So if you want to stop listening, why should I ever tell listeners to stop listening to the podcast?
Listening.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
So Rob, I was talking about earlier, when he got out that time and he got 2 years, and then he got the job at the drugstore, and he was doing okay. And he was also going around and trying to help addicts. And then he let one guy move in and live in his house.
That's right.
And I forget that guy's name, but he was, clean at the time. But as soon as he moved in, he started using heroin again.
That's right.
Then they showed him shooting up in the kitchen. He's like,
that don't bother me.
And Rob's like, that doesn't tempt me. It doesn't bother me, nothing. And then
you could see him looking at it, salivating.
Yeah. And then a few months later, that's when the wheels came off the bus, because the Eckert drugstore closed.
So the job goes away.
Yep. The job goes away, and now he's living with this guy who's shooting up every day.
Important point here. He had been given that job at Eckert by the local manager, he knew him personally. And he didn't either care about his criminal record or didn't know about it, something like that. So what happened was, they were telling him, of course, man, you're going to just move to another Eckert. We're not going to leave you high and dry. You're such a great employee. And he's expecting it. He's helping them close. And then finally, when the time comes, they tell him, the manager of the other Eckert or the higher corporate managers looked at his record and said, we can't have this guy on staff.
Right.
So there's that compounding effect of being a felon or, having a criminal history. It's on the record. And he's trying to do the right thing. He's a great employee. He's clean. And here they are saying, no, even though the other manager was like, he's great, he's the best, he's in charge of all this stuff. It didn't matter.
Right.
So he was not given that other chance to move on. So he still had a great attitude when they were filming him going to the employment office.
Yeah. I'm here to get a job,
but, what a kick in the nuts, man.
Yeah.
After all of that, they had to pull the rug out from under him. It's terrible.
And eventually there's only so much you can take,
Right.
He couldn't find a job. He's got this guy living with him that he, out of the goodness of his heart, he let him move in because the guy needed a place to stay. And then he starts using. And then of course the inevitable happens, right? I mean, Rob goes back to using, and, Yeah.
And it's really awful. And, the other, I think it was Freddie. So Freddie gets out of prison finally. And
he did a long stretch.
He does a long stretch, and he had a son, I think. And when he gets out of prison, he's all clean and sober, and he's looking good. But then one of the things that goes down is he finds out that he's HIV positive.
Right.
Keeping in mind when that happened, I forget what year it was, if it was the 90s.
It wasn't at a point where they had the antiretroviral virus drugs,
So they tell him, or was that Frank? But in any case, he's trying to get back into his son's life, and the son is having trouble in school. He's starting to party, And Rob really, he like goes to the principal to talk to the principal to get him back into the school. And he's trying to do the right thing, and you see that. It just, and there's that intergenerational addiction and criminal behavior. The son didn't know his father because the father was doing drugs and being a criminal, and he was in jail. So the son grows up knowing his father is this way and doesn't have a positive role model. And you can see now he's starting to get into this kind of trouble.
Yeah. And the same thing with, I don't know about Dolores' kids because we only see them at the very, we see them pleading with her not to go out and get high a few times, and that was talk about heartbreaking. But you don't know what happened to them between the mid 2000s and the end of the movie. But they seem like they're more well adjusted than their mother was. But maybe that's because the mother had like 13 years of sobriety at the end.
Now you had some good notes on this that we wrote down.
What did I say?
Yeah, you had a nice little. You sent this to me. You said the documentary is a great launching off point for a discussion about street addicts versus problem drinkers, the role of generational addiction and poverty, and the outcomes of subsequent generations. The criminal justice system's failure to respond to addiction, the way the parole system is designed to encourage recidivism, the absence of any alternatives to 12-step treatment for addicts who NA isn't working for, the role of family and community, how 12-step work plays a big role in recovery, but it's pretty dangerous to do it when all your friends are addicts, and how environment plays a huge role in outcomes. And then criminal records, you can't get jobs and everything. So that encapsulated...
I think we touched on some of that stuff already, but...
But what about the street addicts versus problem drinkers?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean... we've always said, and I believe that, alcohol use disorder is on a continuum, and I believe that that there's people who have problematic relationships with alcohol that are not necessarily street addicts, and and
that brings up that larger question that you and I have been talking about this whole time. We love programs and books like This Naked Mind, but there is a wide range, a wide spectrum of types of addiction levels, and I always said that you take a street level addict, who's really really like these guys,
right,
and you hand them Annie Grace's book. Do you really think they're going to read it and go, I was wrong this whole time. She's right. I'm going to stop all of this stuff.
No, but I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I don't think Annie Grace's book is necessarily written for someone who is addicted to heroin and living on the street. I think it's more targeted towards the high-functioning alcoholic, or even an alcoholic who was high-functioning and is now becoming low-functioning. I think there's a vast difference between having an alcohol use disorder of the variety that a lot of professionals have, even the ones that end up in the sneaking out to their garage and drinking from their handles of vodka that they have hidden, and someone who's shooting heroin into their neck through 10 times a day.
Right.
And I don't think every recovery program has the answer for every person. And I think, for somebody who is addicted to heroin to the level of doing that sort of thing, Annie Grace's book is not going to help you at all.
Right.
But I don't know if AA is going to, or NA is going to help you at all either.
Right.
What seemed to help these guys, and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm thinking this, but they were better off in prison.
Yeah.
Because they got clean in prison, and the shots where you would talk to them after they spent like 2 or 3 years in prison, they were lucid and funny, and the spark was back in their eye and all this stuff. Right. And if only there was some way to carry that forth when you go back into the community, but we do not have the social structure set up in this society to help people reintegrate after they get out of prison. And every one of them that comes out went right back to the drugs after a period. This
is the problem with the philosophy of no government intervention, only self-sufficiency, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, not everybody can do this, and we're losing people by not providing these kinds of services intelligently. And the problem is that because of this, there's a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, and so what filters in is we have 12s, we have AA that is just the go-to because it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and every judge, just go to AA,
right.
whatever, and because of what we're discovering about addiction, you can't have something like the reason that there's only a 10% reported success rate is because it's the only thing most people first come in contact with, and not everybody is suited for it, Mm-hmm. So the question becomes then what do we do? Like, what is the solution? What would be the thing? Like that we have like 10 different options and then a judge, sorts out who goes where? I mean, how do you even begin to address this?
Well, if you get sober in prison and then you are released, in my mind, the minimum that should be afforded to people who are sent back into the community is stable housing situation,
right.
And some way of securing gainful employment. Because if you send a sober person out of prison, they don't automatically go back to being an addict.
Right.
But if you're economically disadvantaged, and you have you can convict someone of a felony, and that's great, and put them in prison, and that's fine. That's society. That's what we do, right?
Right.
But when you release that person back into society without any structure to help them whatsoever, all you're doing is creating a revolving door of criminal justice, because they're going to use again, they're going to commit more crimes, and they're going to end up back in the system. So the system we have is just nonsensical. It's not designed to do anything except punish people.
Right. And if feeling bad, about your addiction cured anybody, none of us would have gone as long as you did. If feeling ashamed was something, or getting punished would cure addiction, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. I
mean, I look back, during the years that I was smoking crack in the Bronx, in a neighborhood that was very much like Newark, New Jersey, right? And that was kind of funny because, I'm watching the documentary with Erin, my wife, who doesn't have that background. And, so she's watching people shoot up in their neck and like do all this crazy shit. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, seen that before, and she's just like horrified, but,
it's a war trauma.
But I would go into this neighborhood and I would do this stuff, and then I could leave.
Right.
I could leave. I get my car, I drive back to Long Island, or I go back when I hadn't failed out of school. I would just go back to school.
Or like that cop said to you the one time, "What are you doing here?" Like, he didn't put you in handcuffs.
No, the guy I was with got arrested, but not me. Right. So I had options.
They always say black people go to jail and white people go to rehab, and it is a sad and mostly true commentary on the reality of the quote war on drugs that's going on. It's really a war on impoverished people of color.
Yes. Although it's interesting to note that Rob was white.
He was Puerto Rican.
No, Freddie was Puerto Rican.
Freddie was Puerto Rican.
Rob was a white guy.
Right. So that flies in the face of what I just said.
Well, but, he still had to deal with being a felon. He still had to deal with being from the neighborhood.
And he was an outlier in that sense.
Right.
And so in that way, we also see that it's not just, what color you are. It's your socioeconomic background and your neighborhood. So maybe some of that has more to do with it because you're trapped in these neighborhoods your father was and so forth.
Although I do remember that one scene where Rob was pulled over in Newark by a cop, I guess, who knew him. And he said to him, what are you doing in this neighborhood? You're a white guy, and those guys over there they're gonna kill you, man. You better, get out of here. And it was a similar kind of thing. But if he had been like one of those other guys who were hanging out on the stoop doing drugs across the street, there's no way that cop would have kicked him loose.
No,
he would have picked him up.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, I think, is totally valid in terms of the racism inherent in the criminal justice system. I mean, I don't think it's hard to look at all the statistics and deny that there's racism baked into the system. But
and that's one of the things I'm also starting to explore with reading Evan Haynes and Bob Forrest's book, which that
is some book.
I know I keep bringing this up, guys, but I am like in this book right now. Typically, I will listen to a book usually a couple of times. But with this book, because it was Audible, I'm reading it like a textbook, and I'm going through it with a highlighter, and every page I pick something out of. It's amazing. And so I'm getting all of this perspective on the just the evolution of psychiatric care as it relates to addiction care today, the criminal justice system and what it does. And so this is sort of where this is all leading. And this documentary kind of just puts it all on the screen.
Yeah, it really reaffirms
and you see the
book.
whole thing. It's like a holistic, like, here's how it went.
Right.
And it just opened a lot of, doors in my mind, a lot more like understanding of it. So I highly recommend watching Life of Crime on HBO Max.
It's a really difficult thing to watch, and I think like instead of like I think a good use for this documentary, instead of like sending police officers into schools and telling them not to do drugs and so on, you should sit these kids down in high school and make them watch this thing, because it drives home in a way that just a lecture from someone in authority never could, the reality of what happens when you get involved in hardcore drug use, because these guys all started with, weed, a couple of pills, a couple of Budweisers, and then, fast forward 20 years and, they're looking for a vein in an alley,
One quote I wanted to close with, from Freddie, who's discussing, his family history. And it kind of says a lot. He says, quote, "My mother and father divorced when we were young. They put me in a foster home, the system, I guess. Some white lady and a white man were pretty old and rich. And then my parents went to court to get me back. And he said if he had just stayed with those rich people, he would have been okay. He has also, the last thing that stood out to me, he has a tattoo on his back. And the documentarian asks, what does that mean? It was in Spanish. Perdón, madre mía. And it means, forgive me, mother of mine. Just this mindset of, I'm bad, I need to be forgiven.
Right.
It's so endemic, and it's sad, because to me, all of these people, they're just me. Like, I think of everybody as just, we're the same, like, organism. Like, spiritually, I feel like we're all, the same. And so when I see that, I feel like it's myself being in that scenario. And it's just, it's heartbreaking, and we can do better, and we should do better. We should. And without telling you the ending, I mean, you guys can kind of imagine where all this ends up, Delirious had 13 years until the pandemic. Right. And she lost all of her social support, all the meetings, all that stuff. She was speaking and everything. Yeah, she had been given like an award for being like Newark citizen of. Her son was proud of her. He was a cop, and then the pandemic came, and and fentanyl did what it does. Right. Yeah, it is a sad reality, but that, what, there's something we can do about it. Each and every one of us, and we will. And we will do our best to make it a little bit better somehow. But yeah, check out the documentary. Chime in on the Facebook group or on the Inner Sanctum, and let's talk about this a little bit. I mean, there's so much to discuss, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Yeah. And with that, it's time for Recovery in the News. Yeah! All right. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news, motherfucker. So this article is from the Huffington Post, and it's entitled "My Sobriety Isn't a Trend or a Monthly Challenge." So we all know this is Dry January, right? Right. We're talking about it everywhere. Everybody goes dry for January. It seems like more lately. I've never seen this much Dry January on standard like news television. Well, it's weird. I think sobriety is becoming $1 trillion industry. Yes, it's considered cool. I saw this. Okay, Al Roker and partner. Okay, they said Dry January. They were announcing it and talking about it, and two of the anchors were doing it, and they said that a non-alcoholic drink market is a $1.6 trillion industry by 2026.
Right.
It's growing so much.
And in fact, a disparate group of manufacturers of non-alcoholic beers have just recently gotten together to form a, I don't know what you call that, like an industry group or something, because they expect the profits to be so astronomical.
Well, I think that's a good thing. Like, this is when capitalism helps us. They see a need, and it's a good one.
And they fill it with non-alcoholic beer.
I love it. I love it.
So the author says, she says, I never thought I would live in a time where sobriety is considered cool. Social media has a sea of sober influencers. The non-alcoholic drink scene is thriving. Even big alcohol is releasing alcohol-free products. I think I mentioned last week that Budweiser is getting into the game by dropping a non-alcoholic Budweiser.
Right.
6.5 million people participated in Dry January in 2021. The rising popularity of Dry January and Sober October, paired with folks posting photos of going booze-free, helps destigmatize substance abuse disorder and the reality of cutting back on binge drinking. And like those folks, the author started her sober journey with a challenge, a 30-day challenge. And she says that while I'm grateful for my sobriety, I wish I had been more respectful to folks with long-term sobriety when I was in the, quote, let's try this whole sober thing phase. And that's an interesting way of looking at it, like, however, so I don't know. I go back and forth in these Dry Januaries and Sober Octobers, because to me it's like, well, if you feel the need to take a month off from drinking, then maybe there's a reason you feel like you need to take a month off from drinking, right? But if it brings you to the point where after that 30 days you then start to question whether or not you're going to go back to drinking, then that's great, right?
I think they're spinning it. They're trying to like couch it in like, there's health benefits, but they say it very innocently, like it's no big deal. And then they interviewed this person on the show when they were talking about Dry January. They're like, well, what are the benefits to not drinking for a month? And then she went into all the obvious ones, less chance of cancer, less anxiety, you sleep better, your skin looks better.
Right.
And I said out loud, I said, yeah, and, domestic violence goes down.
Yeah.
And then, my wife just shot me a glance and I'm like, well, it's true, But that's how they're couching it, like a health thing, which it is.
Yeah. But I mean, where she was right before she quit was a place that I remember being very well. Like, she couldn't understand why anyone would want to stop drinking or how they spent their lives and time if alcohol wasn't a part of it.
Right.
Now with 6 years of sobriety and 5 years of therapy, she can clearly see why she drank until she blacked out, a clarity that might never have arrived with a round of shots on the table. So she had PTSD from a traumatic event that happened at age 14.
Right.
But really, you do need to take that clarity, get that moment of, what do they call it, a moment of clarity?
Moment of clarity.
Or just clarity in general, before you can start to unwind why it was you were drinking in the first place. So to that extent, I guess a 30-day challenge is a great way to get started.
Yeah, it is. And what I like about it is that it draws the attention towards that. Like, just like on that show, they're talking about, there are a lot of obvious health benefits that are not controversial to talk about. If you start saying, we want to reduce drunk driving and domestic violence, the people you're telling are going to feel like you're saying that they're, doing these things,
right?
And so you can't say, hey, we're going to, reduce domestic violence in Dry January, They have to couch it so not to offend people's like sense of themselves, I guess. Mm-hmm. Because the second you question someone and how much they're drinking, you've seen this. If you've ever said to someone in your life, maybe you should slow down.
Yeah.
You get this defensive, angry, like,
sure.
What do you think I am?
Right.
And they immediately begin to defend themselves. I get to work every day on time.
Right.
I don't beat my kids. I this, I that. Mm-hmm. And so that visceral reaction, kind of puts up a wall between them and, admitting that maybe it would be better if they didn't drink.
Yes. And to that end, the author of this article goes into a helpful couple of definitions. That sobriety, she says, is the act of abstaining from a particular substance. For folks doing a dry month, that substance is usually alcohol. Recovery is figuring out why we go to use that substance in the first place. Right.
Right. I like that.
Good distinction.
Very.
I don't know if I mentioned last week, but I saw a billboard when I was in Philadelphia. Did I talk about this last week?
Maybe.
The billboard said it was an advertisement for Dry January. And
I think you mentioned it.
Did I?
Say it again.
Yeah. It said it's not forever. It's just for 30 days. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we try not to think in terms of forever. When I was first getting sober, my sponsor, I would be talking to him and I would say things like, when I was trying to convince myself and I was trying to be convinced, I'd say, I can't imagine never having a drink again. And they would always say, you don't have to never drink again. You just have to never not drink today. And then tomorrow, you have to not drink tomorrow. And you take it as it comes, which is why they say, one day at a time. So because thinking of forever, like I don't think to myself, oh man, I got to brush my teeth twice a day for the rest of my life.
Right.
It sounds daunting, but of course you will, hopefully. Or I've got to take my blood pressure medication every day for the rest. Well, yeah, but you don't think in those terms. You're like, just what's the best thing for me today? And with that mindset, I think it's a little more easier, or it's easier to process.
Yeah, although I don't know, I keep going back and forth on that.
Yeah, you've mentioned before that
because then you've given yourself an out. Like, just for today, I'm not going to drink. What if you wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what? I'm going to drink today.
But people need that psychological out because they're nervous. Like, okay, once I do this, I can never go back. And that's going to keep a lot of people out of it. Now, if they're thinking it's just January, maybe they're more inclined to try it. Maybe they feel like things are great. And, I don't know.
But don't people make pretty clear decisions in other areas of their life, though?
I don't know. I see what goes on the parents page on Facebook. I don't see a lot of clear decisions being demonstrated.
Like, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to get this degree in 4 years. Like, people say that.
Yeah, they're capable of it. So
right. So I'm not going to drink for the next 10 years. The
problem is how ingrained, this goes back to This Naked Mind, like how brainwashed we are for alcohol as like an integral part of the fabric of our society.
Yeah, but once I understand that, once I go through the book and I understand how I'm being manipulated and all this other stuff, and then I don't want to drink anymore because I don't want to be that way. And then I like not drinking. Why can't I say I'm not going to drink for another 30 years?
Because everywhere you turn, there's a commercial of somebody enjoying a drink.
But then you remember. Like, oh, wait, I just said I'm not drinking for the next 30 years.
Well, this is the problem. We don't remember. Our brain, and it talks about this in the big book for all you AA people out there, we have a built-in forgetter, it says. I forget where exactly.
Well, I mean.
Where that we who are struggling with alcohol have this amazing ability to completely forget the last horrible time you had or things, and it's miraculous. Even a week or 2 weeks, you'll still say all you remember is whatever imagined good time you had.
See, my brain doesn't work that way.
Well, good. That's lucky.
I mean,
I remember it.
I remember how shitty it was. Right. And I think if you go through a program like This Naked Mind or something like it, like Smart Recovery, where you really sit down and you look at whether alcohol is serving you or you're serving it, then I think it's easier.
You would think.
Because as long as you believe that alcohol is still serving you in some capacity, then you will find a reason to continue using it.
Well,
you have to believe that alcohol is nothing to you and that all it does is give you pain and suffering.
That's the spiritual awakening, quote unquote, for me.
Oh.
That's when it finally dawned on me. Because I'm a self-doubter. This is what I do. I doubt myself, and this was no different. I knew things were bad. I knew it wasn't serving me, drugs and alcohol. But my environment said different. The people in my life, seemed to be fine. And you see people on TV and movies, and, you think, oh, having a beer, watching football. And I began to doubt myself. Like, maybe I didn't have this thing correct.
Right.
Maybe I'm just not doing it correctly, and all right, I'll switch to wine or something, and we talked about that before. You're changing seats in the Titanic, and so that self-doubt comes in. Like, maybe I don't know, or maybe it wasn't so bad, you know? And then so getting to that point, like we have, through the studies of This Naked Mind and others, I finally was like, no, I know it's right. they don't realize it's wrong. And once I was comfortable with that, it helped a lot.
Okay. Let's leave it there.
And that's Recovery in the News. Yeah. And
it's time for the Week in Weird now.
Week in Weird. Week in Weird. Today on Week in Weird, I have to find it. Scientists train goldfish to drive by Tim Banal.
Who else?
Israeli researchers. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What is so funny?
It's a goldfish driving. Like, what are these scientists doing? They're like
smoking a lot of pot.
I have a great idea. This is what I'm going to train this goldfish. Okay. Israeli researchers studying animal behavior managed to pull off a rather remarkable feat by teaching a goldfish to drive.
A tiny robotic car. Wow.
The intriguing experiment was reportedly the brainchild of scientists from Ben Gurion University who wondered if an animal's navigational skills were dependent on their environment or if these abilities transcend their setting. To put this thought-provoking question to the test, they created a unique vehicle consisting of
a tank of water on wheels with overhead cameras that tracked the movements of the goldfish inside the contraption and then drove in the corresponding direction. Wow, that's some shit.
Setting up a system wherein the fish were rewarded. Were rewarded if they reached a target placed on a wall in a small room. The researchers,
very small room, I'd imagine.
Oh, God. Not only were the goldfish able to successfully navigate the vehicle towards the desired spot, but they were able to discern false targets from the real ones and overcome obstacles that were placed in the way of their tiny car. Additionally, the animals managed to improve their performance over time, initially needing around 30 minutes to complete the task, to eventually, in some instances, pulling it off in less than a minute. The jaw-dropping experiment, scientists say, suggests that the way a fish comprehends its surroundings and navigates within them may be as successful in a terrestrial environment as they are in an aquatic one. And that this finding hints at universality in the way space is represented across environments.
Wow.
Ooh, that takes it back to like crazy science. They also noted that the study proved to be something of a testament to the cognitive ability of goldfish.
Right. That's good.
As the creatures were able to quote, learn a complex task in an environment completely unlike the one they evolved in, likening their experience to the challenges humans face when they first try to ride a bike or drive a car. And I'm so sorry I lost my composure on that one. There's a video that goes along with this.
Oh, shit. What did they do?
You played the thing.
Oh, sorry.
There's a companion video that's been posted by Tim Banal on Coast to Coast AM. Look for the link in the show notes. Point is, amazing things happening in science.
Yes. Amazing things in science.
And
driving goldfish.
Well, I think
scraping the bottom of the barrel.
That about does it for today. I know I had a great time. Did you?
It was awesome.
Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. So tweet us a twat, you twit. Said shout out to all my twits.
What the fuck was that?
That's my Hot 97 morning roll call. Support your favorite show. Drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Join our private Facebook group. It's Recovering the Middle Ages. Just pop it in the search box and sign up for the group. And on our website, you can buy T-shirts.
Yeah, just buy a T-shirt.
It's awesome. Or just write and say hello. Join us at the Inner Sanctum on Patreon. It's a private. It's therapeutic. It's like a closer knit group where
All right, I think
we
they know
recover
what it is.
together. Patreon.com/recovery in the Middle Ages. And finally, the best way to help the show is to share it with a friend. If you get something out of our little show, please share the love and help grow the RMA movement. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
Which apparently may not mean progress, not perfection.
I think
we have to tunnel down into that translation.
We need some Latin help out there.
Yeah.
I think if it's progress, not perfection, I think it's like progressus non perfectus or something like that.
Fortunately, nobody knows.
But it's on all our marketing stuff.
That's true.
It's in our brand.
So we're not going to get the Latin scholars. How many of those are following us anyway?
That's the demographic I'm worried about. So
it's very small.
Progress, not perfection.
Right.
See you next time.
Bye. Be good.